This video walks you through a high-level journey that most organizations go through from first contact to when they have a wider rollout of the Future Fit scorecard. I've broken it down to a number of phases. The first phase is working with a sponsor. So typically someone's been exposed to the Future Fit scorecard by attending a seminar, a course, maybe watching a YouTube video. And based on that, they've come to us with an expressed interest. What we then do is work with that sponsor to help surface the needs and interests of that organization. Now, sometimes this is challenging because our sponsor might be fairly low in the organization or from one specific functional area. And so we have to help them understand some of the broader communications they might have heard or comments made that they did not earlier put into context. Based on that, we're going to prepare a client-specific presentation. And so the outcome of the first phase is a draft presentation that we might even take the sponsor through to make sure it's relatively correct. The second phase is going to some early adopters. So what we'll do is we'll create some short videos on that presentation, and they can send that, the internal person sends that to other key executives. So for example, we'll produce one for the HR department, a different one for the marketing department, a third one for operations, and so forth. And what we're trying to do is put Future Fit into the context of those departments and help them understand how a scorecard will benefit their area. And the idea is some of those early adopters will attend a web meeting and we'll present the seminar to those early adopters, and they can see across the room the various departments getting buy-in to this, even though each of them are seeing a slightly different subset of benefits. And the idea is at the end of that presentation, they make a choice. They choose to either go off and do a pilot of the scorecard in one of those areas, or if it's a burning platform and pressing issue for the executive team, it'll get presented directly to the executive team at this point. Now, typically 80% of the time we hit step 6, we progress to the pilot, step 7. So this phase, the blue phase, is all about preparing the area so we can do a pilot. We understand what the scope is, we define some strategic priorities and so forth. Then we go off and we execute that pilot Future Fit scorecard. Again, this is typically 4 or 5 days on site that takes us from the very beginning to an operational pilot. And then based on that, we'll develop an executive briefing as they use the pilot over the next weeks and months. And that concludes that phase. The final phase is taking that executive briefing to the executives, and from that getting their commitment for a broader rollout and agree on timing, sequencing, scheduling, and so forth. And then it's simply progressing on to build the Future Fit organization. The elapsed time for this journey varies from organization to organization. We've seen it as short as a couple of weeks and as long as a year. It's important that the organization gets buy-in at each step so that we have a foundation to go on to the next. So for example, it's often risky to bypass these early adopters because then you're dependent on only the sponsor to help move it ahead. It's risky to bypass the pilot because you're vulnerable to the executive committee saying, well, that idea would not work in this organization. So we advise you to go through all these steps, but of course it varies from client to client. If you'd like to know more about this or the underlying Future Fit pilot scorecard, please contact us. We'd love to share with you our experiences and industry knowledge.